our mission, Alan Quayle's mission and my mission was, being able to stop spamming your grandma on spam texts. So we unraveled Czar. They started the TCR, and I think I talked about it in your podcast. And we were stifled as well with messaging out there because they're just making too many billions of dollars, all the aggregators. I mean, Twilio makes so much money off spam. I mean, Twilio tried to buy the campaign registry before I did. So then I got brought in by management SAR to do a buyout. And, but it didn't work. It still doesn't work because there's 78 billion spam texts. But I'm glad you elaborated on that. But I want you to talk a little bit more about how do you see this going now with net neutrality? I know I hate to hit you with this. I don't know if you probably had a chance to go through that because I think it's really important. But obviously, I don't have the background that you do. That's something that just came up. Like, I hate to spring it on you, but how do you see net neutrality playing a role?
Honestly, I don't. And someone would have to put that together for me, right? Net neutrality, you're looking at broadband as a communication service as opposed to an information service. I find that most fascinating from a classification standpoint, right? Because I'm a big law nerd. I look at broadband, and although it is a backbone facilitator of certain forms of communication, VoIP, it is not, in my view, necessarily a communication in and of itself. To me, it feels like an information service, which would allow throttling of different layers of the messaging world, which is what I think the commission is trying to avoid. But ironically, of course, when you look at text messaging, SMS, which to me is plainly a telecommunication, right? Like when you send a text message to somebody, you are, wait for it, communicating, right? Like it's not like you're talking about something else. You're talking about a communication, right? And somehow a text message is not treated as a Title II communication. It's treated as a Title III information service. And to me, that's just the most bizarre thing in the world. Now, it was done, of course, to allow for throttling and for censorship of the SMS channel more freely by the carriers. And this all comes back, ironically, to the pre-2015 world we were talking about. Because before communications, you could not censor, block, throttle. They had to go through. Title III information services, you could do whatever you wanted with them, right? So that was always the paradigm. And to a certain extent, that paradigm exists outside of, right, the SMS channel. That's why net neutrality is so important. But it's kind of an interesting thing. To me, the most important thing about net neutrality from the world that I live in is it's like a microscope, a mirror that like reflects back the oddness of the contrary treatment of SMS messaging. To me, the story, right, because again, I'm more focused on outreach using phones, right? That's what I'm interested in. That's what I care most about. The fact that SMS messaging is treated as an information service specifically to allow for more blocking is just fascinating. It's wrong as a legal matter. But then what's even more interesting is how it's wrong as a practical matter, because since the reclassification, or actually it wasn't a reclassification, ironically, it was Twilio who asked for a reclassification and it was denied back in 2018. Since that reclassification was denied, right, in 2018, then Chairman Pai of the FCC said, hey, look, text messages are information services, and that's why you don't get any spam texts, because the carriers can block it, right? Ironically, 6 years later, now the text spam is out of control, right?
Out of control.
What changed? What changed? Well, I look at what changed is TCR got involved. And I don't know why. I don't know why it is that before TCR, when you could use A2P, unregistered on a 10DLC, and yet there wasn't all this spam traffic. And once 10DLC, the rollout to the campaign registry took place, all of a sudden we have more spam traffic. I don't understand
it's 10
why
times.
that is. But why, right? I mean, you seem to have some theories on it. I don't have the answer to that question.
I can tell you why. And Alan, you may want to jump in and be a little more thorough on this. So prior to the TCR, a company called Cineverse, which I had to go through a lawsuit with against them. I restructured one of the 3 messaging hubs. So you have Cineverse sitting in between T-Mobile and AT&T, and you have Cinch, which used to be SAP, now sitting in Verizon on P2P. Prior 2015, 2016, when I had a hub, we were the ICV for Metro PCS. What we used to do, because it wasn't that much spam, they would pump all the application to person messages through the P2P routes, right? And just get enough of it to where it wasn't too much. But what happened was the phenomenon of Twilio. That's what happened. So Twilio and then Vonage, Cinch. What happened was the phenomenon of CPaaS, which Alan is one of the biggest experts in the world on, and it exploded. So messaging exploded as that vehicle. No way better to connect with your person. It's a 98% open rate. I mean, you know that. I mean, you're talking about this. There is no better way to communicate. So I don't think it was so much. The TCR was put in place because what happened was the carriers. I mean, Twilio had an $80 billion market cap at one time, right? They were trading at 20 times revenue, not even $4 billion in revenue, and trading at $80 billion. Where AT&T is trading at $118 billion market cap. I mean, so think about how close they were to a company with all the infrastructure, revenue, and debt that an AT&T has. So then they flipped the script and they created this campaign registry for the sole purpose to try to monetize it, tariff it, right? But they did it, and the original plan, and I can't wait till Bill Peters, who's the founder of the campaign registry and the first RFPs, is able to talk. They did it and basically made it not work by design. So now the mobile operators, I'll answer you. 2018, making zero off A2P messaging. Take 10, 2022, 20 billion plus. You see the shift, right?
Yeah. So essentially the carriers became jealous of the valuation and the money that Twilio was making over what they're providing, which is SMS. So TCR was introduced so they could monetize basically A2P and take their fair share. Europe has the same problem as well, but here in North America, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile wanted their fair share of all those A2P revenues. So if you've already authorized your campaign, it's half a penny. If you want to send spam, it's a penny, because there is no control over there. So that's why they're making tens of billions, and why the TCR was introduced with this very weird, you have to register, but if you don't, well, you just pay a little bit more. So that's why
TCR is controlled by the three operators. Sorry.
Yes.
The TCR is just owned for them, but it's controlled by three individuals that spent years setting this up in collusion without the umbrella of the CTIA. So we've been calling for an antitrust suit for years, but there's no lawyers out there with enough nerve to go out and try to fight these arbitration clauses that the operators have. There's a real antitrust lawyer out there. There's a case that's insane because the three operators set this up by design. Originally, the RFP was run by CTIA, which is basically the operators, arm, and iConnective, who also owns the short code registry. Exactly. So this was all created. But if you look at one thing, if you just look at Twilio's market cap a few years back, 80 billion, today 10. Cinch, 20 billion, today 2. They're all taking it back. Well, more so in the USA. Internationally, the different ecosystems are. We have something called artificially inflated traffic. They're charging 15 cents, 20 cents in some countries for termination and just running spam through it on artificial. So it really just comes down to money. That's what really happened. I'm not sure if me and Alan explained that good enough for you or concise enough. I know you're bit.
Well, I'll put it this way. To me, the key takeaway that I had from that I guess I hadn't realized before, and that isn't necessarily consistent with what I've seen, is that you can continue to carry unregistered A2P traffic. You just have to pay more for it. I didn't know that. Because I mean, look, we have all of our clients are looking for white channels, so to speak, and they want to be able to get their traffic through. So they're all running registered traffic, and it's interesting. To my knowledge, there was no alternative. I thought that was the concept of TCR, is the ultimate gatekeeper to the networks. You don't get to do P2P on a 10DLC. You can't register your campaigns. You can't get them turned on with any legitimate provider without that clearance. But what you're saying is you just have to pay more for it.
Well, you pay more for it, or you run it through Cineverse. Cineverse, when I was doing my diligence, had very little campaigns. Why? Because they had the P2P routes, so they could still pipe it through. Why did Twilio give $750 million to Cineverse? So what got Jeff Lawson fired, according to the lead activist that we unraveled, is Jeff Lawson Twilio paid $750 million for a minority stake in a company called Cineverse that was the hub for Verizon and T-Mobile, right? These guys were a couple of billion in debt, had a failed SPAC deal. And Jeff Lawson's answer was, well, you know, we like to help our friends. What public company buys a minority stake in a company with $1.3 billion in debt if you're not getting access benefits, right? So Cineverse could do whatever they want at the end of the day. They can pipe in whatever they want. The carriers can do whatever they want. You know, Cinch technically could, but I don't think they're sharp enough or have enough nerve to do that. But, you know, I know of another route through Europe that can go through them. They won't even see it coming because it's hard to find out what's P2P, what's A2P. Because all A2P is P2P with a label and a dollar amount. That's all it is. Because when I had my hub, we had zero cost. It cost me zero to send a message to Verizon. Verizon zero to send a message to AT&T. So it's an economic game. Did I make sense on that one? So there was zero cost on person to person, which they turned into application to person, and they call it CPaaS.